Hello and welcome back to another Demis Hellen tutorial. We are on the Dune 3 series and this is part 5, looking at the MSEGS. Now if you're not familiar with MSEGS, we can hear the effects of an MSEG now in the music that is playing behind me, and it is a multi-segmented envelope generator, essentially a graphical envelope. So we can still recreate a standard filter envelope, for example, so we can have attack, decay, sustain, and your release. And we can still have that same shape like that if we wanted to. And there's a lot more that we can do with MSEGS, so let's take a look in this video at the things that we can do, and we'll just try and recreate something similar to this demo audio that you can hear. Just before we get started, if you're not familiar with the oscillator, the voice edit section, the filters, we've already covered these in the previous episodes, so there is a link on screen now in the top right and in the description to the playlist, so you can watch from the beginning and follow through to this point. And this preset, you can grab this on my Patreon page. This will be available for download at the release of this video. So you can subscribe and just subscribe once if you want to get hold of the 5 presets that I'll be releasing along with MIDI, depending on which tier you choose to subscribe to. If you don't want to subscribe, that's absolutely fine. You can just follow this tutorial and copy this preset if you wish to do so. So for this preset, we're going to use 2 voices, and the first one is going to be something like 7 to 8 voices. Let's just stick with 7. I'm going to bring down the amount here of our detune, and I'm going to increase the spread. And before we get started, let's just have a look over some of the features here. Each MSEG comes with the same panel on that left-hand pane. And here on the left-hand side, we have note on, off, key on, and loop. So note on is as you hit the key, it will trigger the MSEG. Note off is exactly the opposite. So as you release the key, that will trigger the MSEG, depending on what pattern you've got there. Key on is good for arpeggios, and we'll probably look at that in a future video. And loop does exactly what it says. It'll just keep continuously loop it, and that's great for transcates or evolving pad sounds, etc. And we're going to be using loop in this case. We have our length, so we can have up to 32 bars, and I'm just going to keep that on 1 for now. And then we have velocity and key tracking, as well as sync and rate. So let's take a look at sync. I'm going to switch that on, and you can see it changes our grid to 1 to 4 or 1.4, and we can change the rate here, and you can see the values above. So I'm going to pick a rate of 8 triplets, for example, draw our line in, and we'll get a triplet vibe coming out of that. Then we have velocity, key tracking, a sync button, and a rate button. So without sync on, it'll just adjust that by so many times, as you can see there. So it's like a free rate, and then we have a sync, which then will put it into time frames. And you can see this changes when we switch the sync on and off. So I'm going to leave sync on, and we're going to adjust the rate in a second. I just want to show you over here, we've got a little window that will say what's going on with your MSEG. So if we create some points, you can see it's giving you values. Is it 93% maximum of the MSEG, and what positions it at? 1.3.1 and 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. It'll just give you a nice positioning system so you know exactly where your points are. We also have access to presets. These are going off the bottom of the screen, but we have some things that come with Dune 3, which is handy, so we can have a transcate in there, for example, and attach that to the volume, and that will give you a nice transcate. We have a copy and paste feature. We can invert it, so it actually essentially reverses it. Reverse it on this axis as well, so we've got 2 axis reversing, inverting, whatever you want to call it, and then we have a clear button. So let's get this set up. I'm going to set this to 8 notes, and I'm going to set them to triplets for now. And I'm going to set this as a sort down. And we do have the option to bend these as well in between, so we can get a nice sharp envelope shape if we want, or something a bit more rounded or more linear like that as it would come standard. And we're going to make this a little bit more rounded, but we'll do that as we attach it. So we're going to touch into the mod matrix a little bit here. This is the next video that's coming up about the mod matrix, but we're going to have to use this to actually use the MSEG. So down at the bottom here, we're going to choose MSEG1, so that's our source. We want something to control something else. So what do we want it to control? Its destination, which is going to be oscillator 1 volume. Now I'm going to turn the volume down here to 0, so we can't hear anything. If I hit play now, we can see it's playing here and nothing's actually happening. We've got MIDI notes in, light coming on. And we're going to increase the amount. So we can hear now that we're getting this exact shape at that pace. If we slow that down. We get all the different times, and I'm going to make this more rounded like I said. So I'm just going to bring down the amount a smidge just so we've got a nice starting point, not at maximum. So you can see by just moving this we can make it shorter or longer, but still keeping it in that same time frame that we've chosen. So this is just decaying the volume, but not as harshly. It's actually a more gradual drop, and then it drops really fast at the end, and it just gives you a bit of a fuller sound. So that is the first part done. Now I want to attach this to a filter. So I'm going to use the clean low pass. I'm going to try and just use everything as standard, and I'm going to bring that down to around the sort of 10 o'clock position. Okay, that will do. And before we go any further, I'm just going to increase the filter back up, and we're just going to adjust these. So I want to put it on analog, and I'm going to increase the release here a little bit, increase the attack, and that should do. There, so we have a little bit of tail off at the end instead of it just being an off. So I just want something a little bit smoother. Perfect. So return that to around 10 o'clock. Perfecto. And now I want to modulate the cutoff. I want to actually make the sound audible, but using a predetermined pathway, should we call it. So we're going to go to MSEG 2, and we're going to change this to loop. And I want it to operate over 4 bars. And I'm just going to draw some random points in here. Let's just have them. So I'm going to make these just a little bit more varying, so they're never going to reach 0. And we'll have one whip in a little bit more there. Just making this random. This is no particular thing to do. Put on sync mode, and I'm probably just going to leave it on. Yeah, let's just leave it on 1 bar. There we are. So we get a full loop over that 4 bar section. Now we haven't attached it to anything, so let's go up here again, choose MSEG 2 from the list this time. And we're going to go into filter and choose cutoff 1, which is this here. And then I'm going to increase this as it plays to a desired level where this sounds acceptable. I'm just going to increase this a little bit here just so it matches in with the start point there, and that will do for now. It's giving us some movement, so now our gated sequence is starting to develop a 3rd dimension. There's a little bit too much low end in there, so I'm just going to show a bit of versatility, and we can actually turn on the EQ, and we can put a 12 dB low cut on here, and I'm just going to say let's chop that at 60 Hertz. So it just gives it a little bit of a smoother appearance. If you can't hear, let's just turn this up a little bit more. And there we are. So that's just cleaning up the lows, but I'm also going to automate this with MSEG 2 as well. So we can have multi-points and we can also have multi-voices, but we're not going to go into too much depth with that because we need to talk about the mod matrix first. So we're going to pick MSEG 2 again, and I'm going to pick the effects bus 1 because that's where this particular EQ is located in this instance. And we're going to go for EQLC, which is there, frequency. And we're just going to incrementally move this around, so let's just put it at 50 for now. So what that's doing now is automating this, and it's moving the frequency point, so it's actually chopping even more lows out as it moves. So essentially it's like me doing this by hand, but to that MSEG style. So I'm just going to put that roughly back on 60. That was perfect. So it's now moving to this pattern, and that sounds acceptable. It's moving around and it's starting to add another layer of dimension to the whole build. So that's it for the first sound. I'm happy with that. We can adjust the filters after once we've put our second voice layer in here. So that was voice number 1, and now we can increase the amount to 2 voices, and we're going to say solo layer 2 and select layer 2 to edit. So you can see nothing's changed over here, and we've covered this in the previous video talking about the voice and common settings here. So if you're not familiar with that still, go and refer back to that video. But we now can change this here, and let's just change that down to 3, and we're going to leave everything as it is, and I'm going to change this to Gaussian. I just want something a little bit softer. Now you can hear this is a thinner sound. And what I'm going to do for now is turn up the filter here so we can hear exactly what we're designing. I'm going to bring the spread down. I'm going to bring the detune down. Yeah, we'll keep the spread down because we're going to actually do something with MSEG 3 in that instance. And here in MSEG 3, we're going to have just something simple like a ramp down. We're not going to do anything else. And again, this is going to be on loop mode, and we're going to leave it on 1. And the sync is going to be on 8 triplets here. So it matches the same speed as MSEG 1, which is also set at the same rate, but it's a different pattern. And we're going to attach MSEG 3 to the mod source, and then we're going to control firstly the Unison Spread. So that's easy. We can go into voice oscillator 1, and we can find the tune and amount and spread. So I'm going to choose spread. Let's have a listen to how this works. Okay, so I'm going to make that more linear again. I'm just going to attach that to the middle so you can see it's more of a straight line. And we've just incrementally bouncing the spread up. So this essentially is just kind of pulsing the spread up like that. So we're maintaining a thin sound, but it's just injecting a little bit of depth from the detune in there from the other 2 voices surrounding it. We've chosen Gaussian just to give it a bit of a softer approach as well. And it's not too noticeable, but there's enough there just to give it some extra layer and depth. And then finally, we can use MSEG 3 again in this instance, and we're going to attach this to filter cutoff 1. So just like we did on the other one here, you can see MSEG 2 is controlling filter cutoff 1, but that is for voice 1. So we can now change these. We're going to cover this in other videos, but I'm just going to increase this till I get a desired amount. And let's just drop this again to 10 o'clock. There, so I just want some minor movement there. So you can see plus 85 is MSEG 1, but we've got plus 14 on here just to keep it in the background. Now that's going to control this one here, MSEG 2, filter 1 cutoff, and MSEG 3, filter 1 cutoff, is going to control all the voices. So when I go back and activate all these voices here, so we're using all, we're going to hear that this modulates filter 1 cutoff for voices 1 and 2, and this one does that for 1 and 2 as well. So it's going to move the filter on both of those. So to get around that, we can choose voice 1 and edit voice 1, and we can see our filter position is slightly different to that of voice 2 when I select it. So you can see we've got slightly different values. I'm not too bothered about that in this particular design, but what I am bothered about is what these control. And we can use voices up here. And when we drop down, we've got a plethora of things, and we're going to cover that later. But we want voice 1 only to be affected here. And this one was designed for voice 2. So we only want voice 2 to be affected here. So now the filters will move independently rather than having just one global filter. Let's just turn all. And voice 2 is just kind of sitting there at the moment. So we're going to go into edit voice 2, and I'm going to throw that up 12 semitones, which is 1 octave. I'm going to increase that a little bit more. And there's one thing missing. I want to have a little bit more movement and presence in there. So we're going to use MSEG 2, which is this one again. That's just creating some randomized movement I made there. And we're going to use voice 1. And we're going to actually balance the filters between both. And I'm going to choose a notch. So now that we've got a little dip in the EQ on our filter, we can now do this. Let's just solo this one. So it's a bit like a phasing, flanging sort of sound. And in conjunction with this moving, we can change the position of the filter just to accommodate this a little bit better. I'm going to just set the notch off roughly in the same place. I'm going to put some resonance up here just to give it a little bit more presence. And MSEG 2 is now going to control that. So MSEG 2. And then we can go to filters, number 2, cutoff. And let's just say we want to increase this, I don't know, sort of halfway, sort of like 40, 50-ish. So it's a little bit weird there, that whip. So I'm just going to adjust this so it's a little less intense. Perfect. Now this is controlling filter 1 as well, so I'm just going to move the position here. And there we are, we have a completed sound. We've got multiple layers of depth and we've just used 3 MSEGs. We actually haven't done anything else in terms of sound design that we wouldn't normally do, just the effects bus. And we can just stick some delay on there, we could have some ping pong, and then you could have some reverb. Let's just leave large hall on, let's put some pre-delay, a bit of low cut on there. And then just to give it a bit of a boost, let's use the compressor and just increase the output. And there we have it. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know down in the comments if you have any questions about what you've seen today. I'll be happy to get back to you and answer any questions. And don't forget to leave a like and also hit the subscribe button so you get to see when these videos get uploaded, which is every 2 weeks. I'm a little bit late with this one, but we are back on track now. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.